Hello and welcome to another webinar from the Accountants Mastermind. My name is Mark and I'm here today with Sophie from Firmcheck. Sophie is going to talk to you about how to build an AML project plan to get your AML compliance sorted. Say hello, Sophie.
Hi.
Hello, and let's get started. So without further ado, I'll hand over and thank you very much.
Okay, good morning. Okay, let's get right stuck in, I suppose. So my name's Sophie. I'm from Firmcheck. I'm not here to sell Firmcheck. I actively try to avoid selling Firmcheck because the part I'm passionate about is education and events, and that is my job title at Firmcheck is Community and Events Manager. What I'm hoping that you'll walk away with today is a fundamental understanding of the project management principles and how you can best apply them to your firm. Why this is relevant is when talking to a lot of people like accountants and bookkeepers at events, most go, okay, I love the Firmcheck product. I know I need to be better when it comes to my AML compliance. 9 times out of 10, everybody says that they know that they can be doing better. But when talking to them, they often say that they lack the time to be able to do that. You know, I'll do it in a few months, I'll do it at month end, whatever have you. What I think it is, and what the key is understanding a way to implement change in your business in a structured way that doesn't disrupt your existing business processes that you do day to day. A little bit about me. I'm from New Zealand. I started my career with 10 years in retail. I've worked as a makeup artist and a store manager, as you can see on the left-hand side. I spent last night trying to find pictures of me in my store, and I only have one of a fan, me holding a fan, but I love that fan. There was no aircon in our back room, so I often took that fan around everywhere. And the picture at the bottom, so Firmcheck actually is also a software in New Zealand called ConnectWorks. We brought the AML portion to the UK, so that's our team when I started all back in Wellington a few years ago. Before moving to the UK, I lived in a container cabin. I thought they were quite common here, like little small homes, but apparently not. So it was 2 containers stacked next to each other. It had a full bathroom, I promise, a beautiful kitchen, and you can see the beautiful trees that we have in New Zealand. It was on a farm and there was cows and I loved it. So I live in London at the moment, so I really miss it. But I work for Firmcheck now, and that's a photo from Accountancy North when we launched last year. I moved over to help support the launch of it. And as I said, now I'm in that community and events side. So I'm often at Accountex and DAS and those sorts of things. And if you've seen Firmcheck before, you would know all the webinar content that we deal with. So we're going to start by talking about the fundamentals of project management. And I'm going to talk to them in the context of a Yorkshire pudding. So me not being from here, I do have a British family, and I went up to Yorkshire and my Yorkshire auntie served me one of these, and I thought that they were kind of like a UK staple and everybody had them and knew them, but apparently not. But they're really yum. Your whole fat intake for the day, honestly. But I will go to explain defining the project objective when establishing what you're going to do within your business. So as I said, this could be reviewing your AML compliance, but it could also be anything in your business. Say if you needed to implement a new practice manager system, you need to recruit new staff, maybe you want to move offices, whatever have you. The project objective is basically you saying what you hope to achieve and what you want the outcome of all this work to be. We'll talk about how you can identify tasks to meet that objective. So really breaking it down to the granular level of what you need to be doing and what each step's going to look like. Because we're talking about AML compliance and there's that legality aspect to it, we'll talk about how you can reduce the risk to your business. There'd be nothing worse than going into this project and making changes where you eventually lead yourself into non-compliance while you're trying to drag yourself out. We'll talk about time boxing and prioritizing and how you're going to order those tasks and the project timeline in which you're going to do them. The project cost, I did see a question of what is the actual cost of making these changes, and then your project implementation. So let's start the project objective. So as I said, it's what your end goal is. So is it that you want to be certain that you are AML compliant? You want to make the processes in your business easier. You want to take less time doing AML compliance. As I said, I've heard no one say they want to take more time doing AML compliance. What you're going to do is you're going to write a short brief of what that is and why you're going to be doing that in your business. And we're going to include some big box actions in that. So the big box tasks that you're going to implement. So say, is it you want to implement AML compliant software? Is it that you want to review all your documentation, your policy, procedures, and controls? What are the things that are keeping you up at night going, okay, AML compliance, I need to do this, that, and the other. It is really critical to be very clear in this, because if you don't, you kind of get lost in the sauce along the way, or lost in the gravy, I mean to say. If you're not clear, you'll get distracted by the fun, shiny things that you see as you move along. I suppose you can liken it of going I really want to go on a summer holiday, and you're not very clear about where that's going to be, and then you end up in Tenerife or somewhere because you weren't clear on actually what you wanted. Firmcheck has what we call the maturity model. You can submit we've built a questionnaire, and you can, in that, it asks you questions around what you're currently doing and the attitudes that you have to AML compliance, and it pops out what level of AML maturity that you're at, either 1 to 5, with 5 being 5 stars. And it also gives you a little bit of direction in terms of the steps that you can do to improve that compliance. It's available on firmcheck.com. One of the real life examples of when I've built a project objective is when we were back in New Zealand and we were planning our holiday party, our Christmas party. And trying to wrangle, 20 odd people and all the things that they wanted. I just said, I just want people to have fun. I want people to feel included, and I want people to show up. And those were my project objectives. And then I built back from that. And we ended up doing a scavenger hunt around Wellington in New Zealand. And some of them just sodded off to the pub instead. But they had fun and they were engaged and they turned up. So I met my project objective. The secret sauce of AML compliance is here. These 6 steps are the key areas that you should be looking into when looking at your AML compliance and seeing how well those are strengthened. A documented firm-wide risk assessment is one of the most common failures when it comes to non-AML compliance. Your firm-wide risk assessments, that founding document, should we say, of you looking into your business and going, okay, what can I perceive to go wrong here, essentially? And what am I going to do to help prevent that? So in an example, maybe you deal exclusively with international clients and you're not meeting them in person often. What are you doing to reduce that risk to your business? Because the risk is you're not meeting them face to face. They're not conducting business in the UK, which is odd if they're asking for a UK accountant. But that's a risk to your business. It's also a risk if you are dealing with clients that deal with large cash volumes, the typical hairdressers, nail salons, things like that. What are you going to do to reduce that risk? Essentially, it's your kind of plan. Just a high-level overview, though, not the details, because within your policies, procedures, and controls, you say exactly how you're going to do that. The policies, procedures, and controls are for your firm members to refer to know what to do. So if it's just you, you still need these documents, even though if everything's locked in your head for when the AML auditor comes knocking. But they are really critical so that you apply a consistent process when dealing with compliance. AML training. So we all know CPD, but you need to be conducting, I believe it's at least an hour of AML education a year. This can be informal, so this can be rocking up to, say, this webinar, or it can be e-courses, those sorts of elements. As I said, I work in the education space on Firmcheck side. We have a large or impending large course offering. It's all free, and you get a record after that. So you need to be recording what education you're conducting each year for you and your team. That's also part of your audit process. Clients and their beneficial owners' IDs identified or verified. So this means obtaining driver's license copies, passport copies, validating them within a software if that's required, council documents. You need to be able to identify your client to the point that if someone else was to pick up your documentation, they would then also have confidence in who that person is, rather than you just saying, Fred's my neighbor, he lives down the street, that person. That's not enough to warrant that. And you do need to do identification on Fred, just by the way. Friends and family, you still need to be doing AML compliance on. Your client risk assessments is conducted for each client. So this is different from your firm-wide risk assessment. I said firm-wide is the macro. It's the large box risks that you perceive. And then your client risk assessments, the individual risks that could be reflected in that client. So I don't like describing it this way, but it's essentially a tick box exercise of going, does this client deal in large cash volumes? Yes, no, those sorts of elements. And then from that, then you're able to determine that client's risk level, either low, regular, or high. And you need to be reviewing your firm-wide policies at least annually. I feel it in the waters that there's about to be some new laws coming through for AML with the new government. So we want to ensure that we're staying on top of that and that those changes are reflected in our policies and procedures and controls. But also too, your client profile can change every year. Maybe you're dealing with lower risk clients, maybe higher risk clients. Just have a look each year because you don't want it to get away from you. Okay, so into the actual project management side of it. So we are going to identify tasks. So how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. And I feel like people really look at AML compliance like an elephant, but it really doesn't have to be. What I would recommend here is setting yourself a timer and getting a stack of Post-its. 10 minutes probably should be about enough time for you just to sit, focus, and write down every single little task that you think you need to undertake to complete your project objective. You can see in my very beautiful picture, please don't try zoom in on it because some of them just say ABC because I ran out of ideas, but different colors can help you identify the ones of greater importance or the ones that you believe are a greater risk to your business and maybe leading most to non-compliance. And really sitting down and ensuring that you have everything together helps you avoid scope creep. So I love being able to say a term because it makes me feel like I know what I'm talking about. In this case, I do. But scope creep is essentially when you start working on a project and then you get distracted by the other things. You want to add, you want to do something else, or you see something nice and shiny and sparkly and go, oh, that would be cool to do that. We don't want that because that's going to blow out our project and then we'll never finish it, which is the most disheartening thing. So really be consistent with what you're writing down and really dedicate that time. Some of the areas of non-compliance, as we just said, could be in your firm-wide risk assessment or your client risk assessment. So maybe writing down that you're going to review those, maybe check them, maybe rewrite them. Reviewing compliance software, Firmcheck's a great option. Reviewing past client documentation and identities, reviewing firm policies. But it also can be asking your team, or maybe just asking yourself if you're on your own, but asking your team what they know about AML compliance and what they know about your policies. Those are all really great options. But yeah, lots of little tasks really help you better see what the volume is that you're going to have to do. I talked to risk mitigation here. So this is really critical, as I said at the beginning, because you don't want to start doing things that lead you into the road of non-compliance from this beautiful AI-generated image. I'll take software migration as an example. So if you are moving from, say, managing your AML compliance on a spreadsheet, which is common, people do come up to me at events and they're like, I manage my AML compliance on a spreadsheet. And I'm like, great, that's actually great. And you can manage your compliance on a spreadsheet, honestly. But maybe it's you going from that to then using a software. So between that, there's a lot of risks in that you could lose client documentation in that migration. You lose the processes that you need to identify clients. These, again, just like your firm-wide risk assessment, you're looking at all the things that could go wrong and what you're going to do to reduce that risk. And also at what point when you start working on the project and you go, this is actually not how it's meant to be, creating a process of how you're going to roll that back to the processes that you did before. So we want to do things in small bits when we're making changes so that we can implement the change, see how it reacts and if it works. And then if it doesn't, then we can roll back. So that's a really good example of how you're going to be able to reduce risk to your firm. Just take a drink of water. So when we talk about time boxing and prioritizing, so we started out, we wrote down all of our tasks that we thought we needed to take or we identified that we wanted to take when it came to our project. Now we're going to look at the amount of hours it's going to take us. So there was also a question when it comes to what's the actual cost of AML compliance or implementing this. This is how you'll be able to start to break that down, because it will be a time cost, the time taken away from clients, but we'll dig into that in another slide. So you're going to write down the amount of hours that you think that task is going to take. Any more than 3 hours, that task is usually made up of more smaller tasks. And we only want to say no more than 3 hours because I personally can't sit still for longer than an hour at a time. So to sit and commit to something for 3 hours is pretty strenuous. And so if you find that you think it's going to take 5, 6, 7 hours, break it into smaller tasks again. By doing that, it will help you not half finish things and walk away. And we're going to, as you can see here, order the tasks in list of priorities. So obviously the hot pink ones, being the ones that we think are leading to non-compliance, are going to be listed first. And then the green ones at the end are kind of like, if we don't finish the project and we don't get these done, that's not the end of the world. You can see horizontal and then the vertical ones. The vertical ones are called work packages. So again, if we're writing a risk assessment, it's not just writing a risk assessment, it's researching risk assessments, going to your accounting body and seeing if they have firm-wide risk assessment templates, which they don't tend to. They tend to like you to write it yourself, like from scratch. It could be then writing the risk assessment, could be then reviewing the risk assessment. All of these are the individual tasks to achieve the larger task, and it's called a work package. Again, if the project feels too large, so if you've done this, go all your beautiful post-its and it's like wider than that wingspan on that Leonardo DiCaprio Da Vinci, that like perfect symmetry, and it's very, very, it's too large, basically, is what I'm trying to say. And it is intimidating. You're like, I'm never going to get this done. Break the project up into two. So break the project into a manageable size and time that you believe it's going to take for one side, maybe for one half of the year, and then this one second half to the year. So prioritizing the bigger box ones first, and then the second ones last, because the whole point is that we're trying to get this done. We're trying to get this all finished. We are going to review what we've done. So just to recap, we've written down all of our tasks. We know what could go wrong, what we're going to do if it goes wrong. We know now how much time it's going to take. We've written down each individual hour that we're going to dedicate to this project. And so now you have what is the bones of this project. So we're going to review it. Basically, if you work in a team or if you have team members, show them this and go, are these the areas that you think we should focus on? Is there anything more that you think that we need to be adding to this process? If you work on your own, which is common as well, do you have a peer or a friend who also works in the same industry to be like, what do you do with your AML compliance? Or what do you do in this area? What practice management system do you use? And ask for that feedback and any gaps that anybody else can see. If you have team members, this is actually really important. And this is something I learned in my time of managing people, is if you just go in with a sledgehammer, which is often my attitude to things, if you go in a sledgehammer, just start changing things, people won't really understand why you're doing that. And for them, it will seem like you're just creating more work. Bringing people into the process helps them bring ownership to it. And by doing that, if they feel ownership over this process, then they'll likely be more involved with it. And they'll likely want to help. They will want to uphold it if they understand it. And good ideas come from everywhere, honestly. I was sat watching Netflix, one of those reality real estate shows. And they had like these really cool caps as their like agency's merch. And I was like, I want caps at Firmcheck, like Firmcheck merch caps. So good ideas do come from everywhere and often in the places that you wouldn't suspect that they do. And yeah, the people that are doing the work in your firm probably have a really good insight into what you need to be doing. Hi.
Hello. John's just asked a question, and I don't know if you're going to be covering it. I think it's a really good question. We use, so he says, we use AML software and have the business risk assessment in place, along with standard risk assessments of different categories of clients, etc. The challenge is getting staff who will be most aware of the client's information to use it to actually update the annual risk assessment at the client level, despite the system being user-friendly. How do we get staff to actually use it where they have the perception that it reduces the amount of time they can spend on creating productive output for which they can bill clients? So I think in essence, what I'm reading that, and unless I'm wrong, John, is how do I get my team to do the stuff that I've asked them to do or that we've implemented?
Nice, perfect. I was trying to follow with all the words. It's like, yes. Oh, okay. So essentially, what you could call it is creating a culture of compliance within your firm. This is great. I was a little bit worried coming into this session because I'm not an accountant at all, and I am quite a newcomer to this industry. So this is a great question because I'm actually writing a course on creating a culture of compliance in your firm. It starts from the top down, so it really starts with the tone that leadership sets. It is common to hear that people go, oh, AML is a cost to the business and oh, such a hassle and oh, I can't, it's costing me money. I can't charge my clients for doing AML. It really needs to start at that high level of being like, guys, this is law. We need to be doing this, but it's also important to protect our business. And these are the reasons why, and explain, what's happening in the UK with money laundering. There's about 80 billion pounds that could be potentially laundered through the UK each year. And while the likelihood that they'll come into your business is small, it's in the effort of protecting your firm. I find in my experience as well, when I had staff members not doing stuff that I'd set out, this is not quite related, but like I had a staff member who just wouldn't clean our makeup brushes. And we would have makeup brushes just stacking up all day. And then I was like, there's no brushes left. And I was like, please, Gabby, just do this, please, please, please. But she didn't understand the why. And I'm sure to everybody here, it makes sense what the why is, but she didn't know why that was important. She thought it was important for her to be on the shop floor selling, but explaining what their role is to play is important, and then helps them own it as well. So I hope that helps. Just explain the process and the policy behind it, and try and make it fun. Like, a lot of people I talk to about AML, they're like, oh, I love looking at people's bank statements and their driver's license and guessing how old they are. Like, I'm not encouraging that behavior, but try and find ways to make it fun.
Yeah, thank you, and I completely agree, because I love processing systems, which is why this particular stuff is resonating with me a lot. And I think that the keys for me are getting them involved in the process, so because they're more likely to take it on if it's their idea. Make it fun, which is what you've obviously said. But also there becomes a point where they need to be held accountable. So KPIs might be involved, or what's the why. Sorry, the why is the top one for me. But ultimately, when it comes down the chain, when they're not doing stuff, it's what you're doing about that's really important, and holding them accountable to understand, for them to understand how important it is. So the why, but what you're going to do about it once they haven't done it and they continue to not do it, because there needs to be consequence.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And from their perspective, they're probably like, I'm just ticking boxes, yes or no. This is a waste of my time. And yeah, sure, that might be the case, but it's like, what can you say so that they don't feel like that's that? Empower them a little bit further into the context, I think, is really key. But I was talking to someone and she had the opposite problem. She's an MLRO at her firm, and she's like, I'm trying to get leadership to actually do it. And I'm like, oh, girl, like, that's really difficult.
The other way, yeah.
It happens in the reverse as well. So I
Yeah.
hope that resonates.
Thank you.
Perfect. Okay, cool. Let's jog on. So project cost. So amazing. So where to start? So there's a cost of time that we said. This is time away from your staff, teaching them about what they need to do about AML compliance. It's time away from your clients as well. You won't maybe be able to book as many billable hours or be able to do as much work for them. Maybe you need to pull some extra hours, maybe working some extra hours if you're in your own firm. And the cost of software as well is something to take into consideration. So that's really important, why we set out the amount of hours we think it's going to take, because then we can better delegate and understand how much it's going to cost. I don't know how many times I can say cost, but I think sometimes what happens is when people go to make changes in their business, they're like, oh, I'll just implement a new software, no worries, easy peasy. And then they start doing it, and then they're like, damn, I've like spent 50 hours on this and I still don't even have my software in place. So to be able to have that perspective allows you to understand the cost, but also be able to decide when you can withstand that cost. Say end of year, maybe that's not the best time because you're working with clients. Maybe it's during the summer, and we'll talk about Firmcheck Summer School at some point as we move along. But that's how you best determine it. And the question as well was how much does it cost? And unfortunately, I can't say. It's actually different for every firm. It's dependent on the size, what you currently have in process, if you have anything in process as well. On the Firmcheck side, like to move the client documentation, which we have offered, so 20, 30 hours sometimes that can take, and that's just moving documentation. HM Treasury earlier this year actually ran a survey for accountants and bookkeepers to fill out for them to try and understand the cost of compliance when it comes to the money laundering regulations. The survey is actually now closed, but it really indicated that there's not a consistent cost to firms. And it was actually quite interesting, the survey. They're like, what's the firm's turnover? It was like started at £5 million annually. And I was like, they have actually no idea about what money people actually make. So anyway, it's starting to trickle through in terms of that understanding, but that's project cost. So project timeline. So as I said, we have our beautiful image of all the Post-it notes in that timeline. I personally like having Post-it notes up there so that when I finish a task, I can take it down and go, oh, chuck it in the bin. I'm like, so glad that's done, you know, and you get this little pile of Post-it rubbish, which is really lovely for the environment. But we want to actually go and schedule when we're going to get these tasks done. There's some human psychology that says if you have it in your calendar, you're going to do it. But don't ask me where to quote that. But for me, it really works if I have set times in my calendar blocked out of when I'm going to be focusing on what things. So I'm going to ask you for each of your tasks to schedule them like appointments in your whatever calendar system that you're using. So you'll say, again, firm-wide risk assessment, because it's the most common one. You think it's going to take you 3 hours, so schedule a 3-hour appointment to be able to do that. Communicate to your team that that's what you're working on as well, so that they know that that's where you're spending your time. And it helps prevent you being booked by clients as well. I recommend doing them at the start of the day, or whenever you find that you're most productive. Like for me, it's from like 7 a.m. in the morning, because at night I'm just watching Love Island, to be really honest with you. I'm not thinking about work. But if you're finding that you're most active at night, then schedule them for the start of that time. And don't be hard on yourself if you need to reschedule. You know, maybe you have kids and something comes up with them, something comes up in your business. Don't be hard on yourself if you need to move it. Just for Google Calendar, you can just click and drag it around for when you next have the space. But ensure that you're not moving the task. Ensure that you're not moving the task too far away that you're then ending up with, say, 4 days where you're working on tasks. So you want them all kind of spread out, so you're doing a bit kind of either each day or each week. Yeah. Perfect. Just checking my notes to the side just to make sure I'm saying everything I set out to. Project implementation, so the actual doing. I've yapped to you for a half hour now, and we've actually just done only the planning stuff on the AML, like building this project plan. And it seems like a lot, but being able to do that and having that clear idea really helps you understand what you're undertaking. When it comes to the actual doing, try to find ways to keep yourself motivated. So what was the reason that we're even doing this? It was because you were staying up late worrying about compliance, or you have an audit coming as well. Like I see often people know that they've got an audit and they're like, hello, please help me. You know, what was that initial thing that triggered you to want to do this? We at the beginning of the year, we had a webinar series called the AML Summit. And I have a tendency, I shouldn't be the best person to talk to this, but I have a tendency of coming up with really great ideas and then not really wanting to do them. So I need to find ways to keep myself motivated to actually execute the ideas that I have. And it was a 3-month project. It took a long time, but I said at the end of it, okay, if we get, I think it was 1,000 registrations, I can buy myself these really expensive shoes. And that might not resonate for everybody in this call, but that was those shoes. I really wanted those shoes. So I wasn't allowed to buy them until we got that registration level. So what's the carrot that you can kind of dangle in front of yourself that keeps you motivated? Part of your AML compliance is ensuring that the process that you do for your AML compliance is documented, and that's on the audit side, but also on your staff side. So on the staff side, you really want to ensure that, one, that you walk them through the process and why you're doing it and why it's important, but also two, by documenting it clearly, it also gives them a reference document to go to if they forget, or if they just need clarification, or if something comes up that doesn't usually come up, like a SAR, or they're suspicious of something, then they can review that documentation to know what to do. And then obviously you're there if they need any further insight. But as I said, also on the audit side, that you need to be able to show what you're doing within your AML compliance. So document the process each time. Before this role with Firmcheck, within Firmcheck, I was in a role called RevOps, which is a role where you implement software and workflows into the business. So I was responsible for a lot of the software that Firmcheck uses, which is ironic because Firmcheck's a software, but we also use other software. But I documented our calling system of like how to set it up for new users and what they needed to do. And it was the best day of my life when someone was like, oh, how do I use, we use a tool called Aircall. How do I use Aircall? Just look at the documentation. I just copied and pasted it. There you go. And they're like, great, thanks. And I was like, oh, saved me time because I spent the time earlier. But that's basically it. Just try and keep yourself motivated, chuck the Post-its out, get a little basketball to chuck them into, whatever works for you. I'd be amiss if I didn't talk to you about like how to implement software. And as I just said, coming from that RevOps background, review events like Accountancy and DAS and Fab, really love Fab. Those are really good places to go to be able to compare lots of software options against each other. And then you get to meet people face to face too. And sometimes I see people come up to me and they go, okay, cool, I have on my list that I wanted to see you. Can I ask you these questions? For whatever software you're looking to implement, try and find as many softwares in the market as you can that answer that requirement for your business, and compare all of their prices to be able to get a good understanding of what the average price should be for that sort of service. I'm currently project managing a Europe holiday. And so we're booking a hotel in Copenhagen. So we're looking at lots of hotels to understand what the actual average price is, because it's all expensive. So we're like, is this normal? But it's the same. You're looking at different prices, understanding where the median is, and be clear on what you need from a software when you're going into it. Often when I've gone to buy software, I've often talked to a sales guy and he's like, oh, there's this AI thing, there's this awesome report that you can generate, it all looks pretty, and you get distracted by the sparkly things. Well, I don't need AI. I don't need it to look pretty. I just need it to work. So that helps you not get pulled in wrong directions by salespeople. So be clear on what you require and what would be nice to have. Also look at how easy is the software to navigate. There's the user experience on the software will help you learn how to use the software quicker. So if it is a wee bit janky and it's a wee bit hard to follow, I don't really know where this button is, those things won't change and they'll take longer to learn how to use it. If the software is really nice and well presented, like take Netflix as an example, you can pick up Netflix and you just know how to use it. Those sorts of things are the things that you want to look for, because when implementing it with your team, you also don't want them to be like, I don't understand this, and you're having to hold their hand, spend the time again. For software, ask about the onboarding and implementation offers that they have, whether or not they help you get onboarded, help you learn how to use the software. Will they take your documentation for you, import it for you? Will they offer none of that? They just expect you to kind of get it done, get on the way. Being out for them to take ownership of that onboarding and implementation saves you time and money ultimately. And if it does cost you money, then how much is it? And is that less than what it would be if you did it? And lastly, do you even like the people that work at the software? Do you like the people if you're seeing them in person on the stand or in the Google Meet or Zoom Meet? Often salespeople are the heightened versions of all the people behind the scenes. So if you don't get along with the salespeople, you probably won't get along with their customer support, and that's really important. we have an education platform that we use called Thinkific. And when I was looking at what ones to use, there was a few other people. And I just didn't like them. They were pushy salespeople. Again, they were like AI this, AI that, and I was like, I don't need that. I don't need it. And I just didn't like them. But when talking to someone from Thinkific, they listened to me. They answered the questions that I had. They didn't try to tell me stuff I already knew or didn't want to know. And I've had a really good experience with them. So yeah, if you don't like the salesperson, you're probably not going to like their support team either. And that's very savage. But software is meant to be an extension of your team. And so, yeah, if you don't like them, it's like the same as not having a nice team member. Conclusion. So this picture is from our Accountancy stand this year in London. If you saw it, let me know. But I was really proud of it. It was a project that it was my first Accountex, so I had no idea what I was getting into. I was wholly unprepared. That place is crazy. But I had to project manage putting our stand together. So for Accountex, you have to order each individual square of carpet. You have to order a plug. You have to order power. You have to order TV. So there was all these little components that I had to organize and make sure were all delivered to be able to have the stand to look like this. I'm a very emotional person, so I did shed a little tear when I saw it. I was like, oh, it's so beautiful. But that for me was the reward at the end of getting to have something that I worked on really hard and was able to deliver and have it look like that. So whatever that looks like for you, just take a little moment when you're at the end to be like, oh, well done, ka pai, as we say in New Zealand. It means well done, ka pai. If you didn't finish the project, that's okay. There's lots of projects I haven't finished in my life. But have a wee minute to think, okay, why wasn't I able to complete that? What stood in the way? And are the things that are left on the project, are they still leading me to non-compliance? Are they mission critical or not? Just take a wee bit of time to think about why that wasn't done. And then if you want to pick it back up or you feel like you finished it in the end, that's okay. Just take the learnings for the next time you do a project. And AML isn't going to go away. I'm really sorry. I wish I could say that it was, but then I'd be out of a job. But it's not going away. It's only going to get more intense, to be honest with you, I think. So the longer that you delay it, it's not like a family member knocking on your door. Like AML compliance isn't gonna wander away. So it's just about when you're gonna turn around and actually prioritize it. Some additional resources as well. So these are all landed on firmcheck.com. We have our Firmcheck Ask Me Anything series with David Winch. As I said, we have our Firmcheck courses. Always refer to your accounting body as well. Like, you're welcome to ask me questions, but as I said, I don't know all the answers, but your accounting bodies do. ACCA, I learned the other day, actually have a anonymous hotline that you can call and ask questions. And I asked as well, they have really strict processes in place to that is anonymous, that the person on the other side of the phone isn't going to go to the AML auditor at ACCA and be like, Sophie Maxwell is not compliant, go do an audit. It's confidential. And we also have the Firmchecks Summer School, which we can talk about past this, but that's a 5-week webinar series as well. But that's me, really. But I forgot I was meant to indicate some polls. So I think poll 2. So I've missed one poll.
Yes, we got some polls if you want me to.
Yeah, sorry, I get all excited and I'm like, oh, and then I forget the technical stuff. So I'll stop sharing here. But if we could launch poll 2, I think it was
it. 2, there we go.
So
the poll is: would you like to find out more about Firmcheck and how how Firmcheck can help you manage your AML. So you've managed all of that time, and I can't even say four or five words.
I used to get like the acronyms of AML all mixed up when I first started, but I know I didn't talk about the Firmcheck product, and that's intentional because I actively avoid trying to be a salesperson. But it basically Firmcheck, just have firmcheck.com, have a look. But it is basically the workflows, ID checking, everything like that that kind of help you maintain your compliance and keep it consistent. So yeah.
Yeah, just to share. So obviously, if you put yes or not right now, but send me more information, we will be sharing your information with Sophie and Firmcheck. Thank you very much for that, Sophie. It's great. I mean, as I said to you halfway through, I love process and systems, and the post-it notes is one of my favorites. I've always used those from probably 15 years ago, I think I learned that. But also the default, so I would call the bit you were talking about scheduling your task as default diary. I use that a lot and talk to a lot of our members and community members about default diary. I'm an advocate of it, and I think it's really important that even if you don't do the stuff, you talked a lot about I think the emotive bit. So if they don't achieve it, don't beat yourself up. Just move on to the next one. I often add, if I've got a project that's going to take a few hours or however long, I add shorter but multiple bits. So if I miss that one, I know I've got the opportunity to catch it up on the next one. So yeah, no, I think there's some great stuff in there. So we did have a couple of questions, didn't we? Which I'm just opening up now. I'm obviously make sure you haven't put them off, but
yeah, I was just going to say quickly about Firmcheck Summer School, if that's all right, because I might refer some of these questions. I might need to refer them to the school. But if you go on firmcheck.com and have a look at what we have on offer, that maturity model I said of understanding what level of knowledge and compliance that you're at. Summer School's 5-week webinar series. So each week for 5 weeks, every Tuesday, there's a webinar. We've got ACCA, ICB involved, which is awesome, like superstar speakers. There's also what's keeping me up at night is 20 new courses on AML. They'll be released in conjunction with Summer School. So you can register from firmcheck.com if you just click the banner at the top.
I've also put the link in the chat box for the Summer School. So
thank you. Oh, well, just go to the landing page then. But it's free. I'm really passionate about giving you guys education for free, and I'm lucky Firmcheck lets me do that. But yeah, it's all free. So I hope to see you guys there. But yes, sorry, the questions.
The question. So we had as I say, we had a few, and we, as you said, you might put them off. But how often should we be getting new ID? Just when they expire or annually?
Refer to your accounting body. But no, so it does depend from accounting body to accounting body. I unfortunately, off the top of my head, can't recall which ones require this, but when, say, a passport expires or a driver's license expires, they do require you to get another, renew that form of ID. Within the legislation, it says that you're required to get a valid form of ID. So they, recognize that from the point when it's not valid, it's no longer valid, rather than when you collected it and it was valid, so that's okay. So refer to them. You don't need to get it annually, as long as it's that valid element. But what you do need to do annually is redo your client risk assessment if you've not adjusted that within the year or touched that within the year. So that portion is what you need to be doing annually, is re-looking at the client and being like, all of a sudden they're buying Ferraris. That's kind of weird because they're a single mum of 2, those sorts of things to understand if their risk profile's changed. But I'm going to say no on that one, but do refer to your accounting body.
Okay. And the key to the AML is knowing your client. How can automation work without proactive input from a human mind that knows the client? And I think you kind of covered that off, but probably worth revisiting some of the extra bits.
Yeah, my answer is no. Really. I often, again, seeing people and talking to people, they go, oh, so can I just get AI to do my AML compliance for me? And the answer is no. And if it does, I'll be very scared. the whole point of knowing your client is knowing your client, and you can only do that as a human, listening to your gut, asking the questions. So there wouldn't, I doubt there'd ever be a place where automation would replace that. But knowing your client is not just talking to them once a year, it's talking to them throughout the year. And something critical for AML compliance is doing that so that you can pick up if there is changes in their behavior or in their business. But it's also just nice. It's nice to keep that relationship with your client. And if you structure it rather than being like, do you live at the same address? Has your name changed? Have you had a child? Whatever have you. Structure it like you're trying to understand how you can better support their business or better support them in the services that you offer. Try to take it as a value proposition rather than a document collection activity. But no, I doubt AI would play a part in that know your customer or your client due diligence processes.
Excellent, thank you. And I think the other one was if one operates as a sole trader only now starting, how do we begin compliance?
With everything I just said.
Yeah, I'm gonna say so. For me, the first bit was doing the plan. That would be where I would be going, is what it is you need to achieve.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, it's just making a start. For me, if it was me, but it would never be me, but I would start writing your firm-wide risk assessment. My stance is that it underpins and creates the foundation for all of your AML compliance.
Yeah.
From that point, it's like a house of cards. Essentially, everything relies on that. So start by running your firm-wide risk assessment. Yeah, that's what I would say would be your first start in creating that really good plan.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much for joining us and sharing some of your experiences in processes and systems. I, as I say, I love it. So it's been brilliant for me. And by the looks of it, we've managed to capture people's time as well. So that's always a good thing. So I'm very pleased with how it's all gone. So thank you very much for joining us, and we will speak to you again soon.
Yeah, sounds good. Yeah, I hope to see you guys all later. Thank you.
Thank you. Cheers.
Bye.
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 Thank you for watching our webinar with Sophie from Firmcheck. During the webinar, Sophie gave some great tips on how to build an AML project to ensure that your AML compliance is sorted. If you like the video, please click on the like button now, and also subscribe to our channel to ensure that you receive the best content for accountants and bookkeepers in practice in the UK. But also, down below somewhere, you'll see some videos that we suggest watching in order to help inspire, challenge, and support you to be the best you can be.